Poppy's been in the gym with me almost every single day, whether I'm coaching or whether I'm the one playing. She is always there. And it was actually really cute. The other day, I walked into the gym and we have a really good group of guys that we compete against. And she's like, Mommy, why are there only boys here today? And I was like, oh, this is who I'm practicing against. And then she's like, huh, that's unfair for the boys that they have to play against a girl. And I thought, I think that was the proudest moment for me, because I had grown up being like, can I please play with you? I know I'm a girl, but I'm tough.
Welcome to Momentum, a podcast brought to you by Team Canada. In this season, Watch This, we'll hear about the inspiring stories of some of the brave women of Team Canada as we look towards the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm your host, Ariane Jones, and I competed for Team Canada in the sport of luge at the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics. Having competed on the world stage, I know all about the highs and the lows that come with being an elite athlete, especially heading into an Olympics. I'm so excited to bring you stories from across the spectrum of sport and celebrate the incredible women of Team Canada together. Today, I'm joined by Paige Crozon, a member of Canada's 3x3 basketball team. Canada's women's team is made up of Paige, Casey Bosch, and twins Michelle and Catherine Plouffe. Paige and her teammates are the reigning FIBA 3x3 Women's Series champions, having won back-to-back titles in 2022 and 2023. Paige played collegiate basketball at the University of Utah before moving to Europe and playing in Germany. Her plan had been to continue to play abroad, but after having her daughter Poppy in 2018, she discovered that teams didn't necessarily want to sign a single mom. Today, she's part of a team that dominates on the court, in part due to the support and friendship that the teammates provide each other off of it. We had such a great conversation about the barriers faced by athletes who are parents and how Paige is finding balance as a mother and elite athlete. Welcome, Paige. I know that you are in the middle of your journey to qualifying for the Olympics, so thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for people to get to listen to your story so that then they can see you and competing and cheer you on, and I just can't wait to be here. So I want to kick it off with your sport, okay? Can you tell us a little bit about 3x3 basketball? From my end, watching it actually reminds me a little bit of playing pickup with my friends as a kid, right? With it being kind of half court and single net. So I'd love for you to tell us about 3x3.
And that's totally the feel that we have on the international stage as well. So it's kind of similar to how volleyball made the transition from 6-on-6 volleyball to beach volleyball, or how rugby went from 11 players on the court to rugby sevens. Basketball has made a transition from 5-on-5 basketball to now 3x3, which is half the court, 3 players on each team on the court at a time. And it's just one hoop set up. Oftentimes our tournaments are in the city center of some beautiful foreign country. And yeah, we get to just compete. There's a DJ behind it. It has a street ball feel. So 3x3 made the debut in the Tokyo Olympics in 2020 or 2021, I guess. And so now it'll be the second time that it's coming into the Olympic Games. But actually my journey in 3x3 started in 2011. There was a 3x3 Youth World Championship, and it was kind of a trial run, was our understanding at the time, to see how the sport would go. And so I was in high school at the time, and myself and 3 other Canadians went to Italy on the coast for a 2-day tournament. And so I played 3x3, and then I didn't think about it again until our team kind of started in 2019.
I love sometimes in life how you can't connect the dots looking forward, but then you can connect the dots looking backwards, right? And you had this moment experiencing that. And I think your analogy between volleyball, that was a light bulb in my head I hadn't thought about before, right? Where it must be such a different energy competing. It's the difference in volleyball, right? You're in a court in a stadium versus beach volleyball is a lot more kind of vibrant energy. You're on the beach, you're outside. And I hadn't realized that about 3x3 of course, in a court, in a stadium, versus you might be in a city center. There might be a really energetic neighborhood and music. And how has that felt different competing in that energy?
I personally have liked it better because I grew up competing, like you'd mentioned, at the playground with my friends, oftentimes playing against a bunch of guys on a playground. So it's like, let's play with my best friends, but on the international stage. And sometimes it's funny because the court will like legitimately be on cobblestone, so it'll be a little bit wavy, but that's kind of like the understanding that we have as 3x3 players is these are the kind of things that come up and you have to adapt.
I love that. That's so cool to know. And I had no idea. Like, it's not even a perfect court setting. That offers such a different element to it. So 3x3, obviously a smaller team, right? It's 4 players, and the roster for yourself on Team Canada has remained consistent with yourself and your same 3 teammates and coach throughout the past couple years. How have you grown together as a team?
That's a really good question. And I think like kind of the formation of our team or kind of like our journey, we've had to overcome a lot of like hurdles to get to this point where we're going to an Olympic qualifier. And I think that resiliency has actually made us stronger as a group. Furthermore, we have like players that come in and will play with us at different tournaments over various points of the season because we travel so much during the year. But I think the main priority for each of us is that whoever is coming in and playing with us is that they have a positive experience playing basketball. 3x3, like we mentioned, is a little bit more informal. So sometimes we'll be practicing and we'll be like, that's a little bit too systematic. Like, let's make it more weird. And I think that's so awesome that we all have that mentality where like someone will dribble it off of their foot, we'll get the rebound, the shot will go in, and then we'll just be like, perfect, just like how we drew it up. Like there's an understanding that, like things can go wrong. How are we going to adapt? Can we be resilient? Can we play through those mistakes? And that at the end of the day, like, let's have each other's back. Let's enjoy the experience. Like, we play basketball because it's fun. We stepped away from the 5-on-5 game for various reasons. For me, because I had a child at the time, and the structure and how formal it was didn't work with my lifestyle. So it's like, we're all in 3x3 for a reason. Let's make it enjoyable. Let's play with purpose and leading with fun, because that's why we play sports.
I love that so much because I think that so many athletes can relate to that. I know even personally on my journey, right? You get into sport because it's fun. That's how you get into it and you like it. And at some point, most athletes have this journey. I know I certainly did, where people go like, stop having so much fun and take it more seriously, as if those things can't coexist. Right. And so you're like, okay, I got to get so much more serious. For me, like, I smiled a lot before I raced, and I had coaches tell me like, stop smiling. You're not taking it seriously enough, and didn't have the confidence yet to stand up for myself. So did. And of course my results got worse. Right. Until I realized, wait, I am taking this super seriously, but I also need to enjoy this, because that puts you in the right headspace to actually be your best self as an athlete.
Yep, absolutely. And that's something that I think that our team has a very good understanding of amongst one another, is we know what each person needs in order to perform optimally. For me, if I become too serious, then I often get tense. So my teammates have a lot of trust in me. They know what I need. They are willing, and there's a safe place for them to check in with me. We can joke around. And I think that like cohesion and trust that we have off the court carries on and is what has made our team successful, because you can kind of like sense the chemistry amongst one another.
Okay, that's a perfect synergy, because I have this quote here from you that I loved that I want to read. So I'm going to read you this quote, okay? So this is a quote from an interview where you said, because there's only 3 players on the court at a time, having that chemistry, or what we call flow, is important. And it's really what sets apart good teams from great teams. Now, reading that, your team clearly has this flow. You clearly have that. How do you feel like your team achieved that chemistry? Like, was it on the court, or are there things that you guys do off the court to bond and create that trust and communication?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I don't think that there's one thing that we do that has kind of established that. I think that it's often kind of created in the little moments. So when we're going for a team meal, it was never discussed, but no one's phone is on the table. Like, we're there with one another. We have that presence. We're interested in everyone as humans first. And, like that time it takes to build trust in one another, the reps that we've had over the course of our careers in tournaments, battling with one another, and like I mentioned, building that trust. And then over time, that's when you can almost like it's intangible, but you can feel kind of the chemistry or the connection amongst one another. And this is like the most special team I've ever been a part of. And I feel so fortunate because it's like they are such special individuals, and I know that they feel the same about me. So I'm like, oh, I hope my daughter gets to experience this in her life. Like, have a friend group where she's able to be like seen and heard and understood and valued for who she is.
That's so beautiful, right? That you have these teammates where it sounds like, first of all, what I took away from that is that small habits add up. Right? So the small habits of you guys having dinner together and just nobody being on their phone and you're being really present and intentional with each other, that's a really small habit that seems insignificant, but yet that presence is also, and that respect that you give each other is also how you show up on the court, right? And the second thing I took away from that was how amazing it is to have this team of women that I think especially, it can be any gender and any person, but especially for women, we're so often in our culture kind of tearing each other down and feeling like we're not enough. And yet you're part of this team where you all feel like you can show up authentically and as weird and as wonderful as you all are, and that everybody's just got your back and you all want to believe in each other and for you each to be your best version.
Absolutely. And to recognize the strength in one another as well and not be intimidated about it or intimidated by it, but almost like, I see your strengths both on and off the court, or I know my strengths and I know my role in the team and I know that that's valued, and I might not be the person that's getting every single point or, like our defensive stopper, because that's Casey's role, but it's like, I know my role is important. And you had mentioned it earlier, but it reminded me of our first year together. My daughter, Poppy, she was 8 months old at the time, and I was going and I had like my gym bag on my back and my diaper bag and the stroller. And of course she doesn't want to ride in the stroller. So she's in my arms and my teammates are like, let me just help you. They just do the little things. One of them is taking the diaper bag. One of them is carrying Poppy. The other one is pushing the stroller. And the way that like those women showed up for me in that moment is like, oh, I was seen. I was safe as a woman with a child in sport, and how powerful that was for me at the time.
Okay, Paige, you're going to make me cry already at the interview. So I'm just going to put that out there. Like, that is so beautiful and impactful. And let's go there, okay? I want to rewind for a second, because what I want people to know of what you just kind of teased in there is that not only are you pursuing your path to the Paris Games, but you are also a mom, and on top of that, a single mom. I pursued and competed at the Olympics as a single 24-year-old, and it was a lot. And so I am beyond impressed by you. And can you just take us back to that 2019 where you were playing in Europe, full court, 5-on-5 basketball, and you said that your original plan was to continue playing overseas.
Yeah.
What happened? Take us back there.
Okay, so in 2018, I had my daughter Poppy, and the plan was to always like play overseas. Leading into 2019, Michelle and Catherine Plouffe, who are two-time Olympians for the 5-on-5 team, decided to step away from that team, and they're like, we want to get back to enjoying playing basketball. 3x3 was making its debut in the Olympics the following year. 3x3, we've been following it for a few years on the men's side, because there was a world tour, and there was Team Saskatoon, and then there was Team Edmonton. And so there was a few guys that we had known that were playing 3x3. So we'd watched this on the men's team for a couple of years. And then we had heard that there was an opportunity for women to compete on the women's series. And so right away, I wanted to be a part of it. And I prefaced, I was like, I just had a baby. However, we can make it work. So that year, we went to Europe like 4 times for tournaments to compete. And she traveled with me everywhere that year. I remember there was like we were about to run on the court and Poppy was just like so unhappy. So I'm just like, sorry guys, like I had to nurse her while my team was warming up probably like 5 minutes before the game. It was an unusual experience, but it was so powerful for me looking back on it now. I didn't feel that at the time, but like looking back, having her be a part of this journey from the beginning has been so special. But as you alluded to, I tried to come back and play 5-on-5 and was in contact with a few clubs in Europe, and I wanted to go back. At the time, there wasn't as many women that were playing professional sports with children, or at least in basketball. And if they were a little bit higher profile than I was at the time, because it was quite early on in my career. And so I like numerous clubs say to me, like, we can't have a woman and a child. We've never accommodated a family. We don't know how to have someone that has a child with them. So unfortunately, I didn't get to go back and play 5-on-5. But hindsight is always 2020. I realize now that my path was always to play 3x3. So I've just continued to stick with it and have her be a part of my journey ever since.
That's such an important story, I think, to tell, because what I'm hearing from that is you had to face a lot of no from this path that you did want to take, right? You had all of these teams that I would imagine you kind of felt before you became a mother, like they had your back. They were your team. You were competing on them. And, how did you find kind of the bravery and the motivation to just keep going and keep trying to pursue being an athlete as a mom when over here you had all of these teams kind of saying, like, we don't actually care about your athletic ability anymore. Now that you're a mom, we don't want you as part of your team.
I had mentioned it earlier, but I grew up playing on the outdoor court. So whenever I was feeling like anxious or sad or overwhelmed, I'd always just go to the court and shoot around. So after our season in 2019, obviously it was the pandemic in 2020. We didn't have a season that year. And we weren't carded at the time, and there wasn't any prize money for us to win. So in order to make a living, and I wanted to stay involved in basketball, I picked up 2 full-time jobs. I started coaching at the University of Lethbridge for their women's basketball team, and then I started working at a nonprofit in Saskatchewan, planning an Indigenous youth basketball league. And so I was still involved in basketball during that year, but I wasn't playing. So I would go to the gym when it was open, or I'd play with my friends when we were able to. And that was like my safe place. Like that was my me time. I was working, I had Poppy, but when I was in the gym, like that was just like pure like joy. I loved being there. So it didn't feel like I was necessarily training. I wanted to make sure that I stayed in shape in case we ever had the opportunity to play again, which we did. But I was just there like out of enjoyment. And that was always kind of like the root and the core of why I played basketball. So it was a really special time for me to be there, not because I had to, because I chose to be there. And furthermore, I got to have Poppy on the sideline. She was there crawling around, learning how to walk. So she is legitimately like grown up in the gym.
I truly had no idea that 3x3 was such a dynamic sport. Being on the court sounds like a really fun experience. Paige is also such a positive person. She was hearing no from teams because she was a mom. But throughout that experience, she maintained her passion for the sport and transformed it into an incredible opportunity as a 3x3 player. I find it very inspiring that Paige and her teammates respect each other so deeply. I loved hearing that they support each other on and off the court. What an amazing group of women for her daughter to grow up surrounded by. I think this team is an important example for all of us of what staying true to your own core values looks like. Your first year playing 3x3, so you and the team won 4 out of 7 tournaments, and you were on the podium in all except for one, and you had your daughter Poppy with you, who was less than a year old, okay? You hold so many different roles: mom, player, coach. How do you find balance? Like, how are you doing it all?
Well, I've since reduced some of my roles professionally now that we've been ramping up for the Olympics. And I think actually a lot of the reason why I have been able to and actually own the things that I've been doing was being involved in an Indigenous nonprofit. Prior to that, I was working in sport or trying to, applying for jobs within sport, but as a single parent. So I would approach sporting organizations, which were like predominantly male dominated, and approaching them and being like, I want to be involved in your organization. I played on Team Canada. I've had these different experiences. However, I have a child, and was almost approaching it from a deficit perspective. And it wasn't until I started working within the Indigenous nonprofit and had amazing mentors and Indigenous leaders that had supported me and said, Paige, that is actually a strength. You don't need to apologize for having a child. We see you, we value that, and we actually think that makes you a better employee, that makes you better able to support the youth that we're working with. So they're like, we don't want you to apologize for that. And like, since then, I've been so empowered in the role as like being a mother, and knowing that, you know, the qualities that brings with me actually strengthen the other organizations that I've been a part of. So I think just like being able to like own my story, own and like cherish the things that make me unique or make me me, have helped me kind of like make decisions as to the things I want to pursue and be involved in, and doing things that are like really meaningful and purposeful for me.
Man, I am just so grateful that you had those individuals in your life, right? You had, because on one side over here, you're having all these organizations tell you no, telling you and kind of just mirroring to you that being a mother and an elite athlete can't go hand in hand, and that being a mother is a detriment to you as an athlete. And that's really common, unfortunately, and we can talk more about that. But then on the other hand, you had these individuals that came into your life, and as you were telling that story, like, I know for a fact people listening to this podcast are going to be crying, because that is so impactful that they were able to mirror back to you, like, Paige, you being a mom is not a detriment. This is to your advantage. It makes you more empathic, more interesting, more all of these things as a person, and like bring it to the table that way. And I'm just so grateful that you got to have almost those role models from a place that you probably never expected them to come from.
Yeah, absolutely. And at timing that I needed it most, I think, in my life as well. And then people that were willing to be like, okay, you are a single parent. How can we accommodate? How can we support you? And having those kind of like cornerstones, like I mentioned, I'm just so appreciative for all the support that they provided me.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful because you got to keep going and you're here today. So your daughter Poppy's about 5 now,
she's
right?
5.
And as we talked about, she's grown up on the court with you. And I would love to know, how has becoming a mother changed the way that you train or prepare to compete?
Yeah, that's great question. And as you mentioned, like, Poppy's been in the gym with me almost every single day, whether I'm coaching or whether I'm the one playing. She is always there. And it was actually really cute. The other day, I walked into the gym, and we have a really good group of guys that we compete against. And she's like, Mommy, why are there only boys here today? And I was like, oh, this is who I'm practicing against. And then she's like, that's unfair for the boys that they have to play against a girl. And I thought, like, I think that was the proudest moment for me, because I had like grown up being like, can I please play with you? Like, I know I'm a girl, but I'm tough. I can do it. And then I had to like prove myself on the court. So the lens, like such an empowered lens that women can be in these spaces and compete and can hold their own, is like, this next generation of young girls is going to be unstoppable. And I love it. So.
Oh, that is such an amazing moment, and something that you should feel so proud of, because you and your team gave her that, right? By watching you guys show up, right? No one ever, like you said, no one ever told her that, but she just watched you. And to that end, like, what lessons do you hope that your daughter Poppy is taking away from watching you and your team compete? Besides thinking that she's like, wait a second, I absolutely belong on this court as a female. And what are all these boys doing over here, right? Like, that empowerment. But what other lessons do you hope that she's taking away from watching you?
I hope that she like sees that I find something, or I have found something that I love, that I'm passionate about. And it's not without sacrifice, and it's going to take hard work. However, if you're passionate about something and if you love it, like, invest in that, pursue that. I mentioned when we started, there wasn't any prize money. There was nothing that we were receiving in return. It was just, we loved to compete. We wanted to play at the highest level. We wanted to play in the Olympics representing Canada. So yeah, chase that and pursue that, no matter if there's like something that you're getting in return, like financially, because the reward is so amazing. And then I said it before, I want her to have an amazing like group of friends, like find a really good group of friends that like can support you through all of those challenges throughout your life. And then you had asked me previously how I manage it all. Poppy has come with me into the gym, and I've just tried to like include her as much as I can within my routine. I think before I had Poppy, I was like pretty like rigid and like regimented in my training. It had to be a certain way. And it's really forced me to be a little bit more adaptable, a little bit more flexible, mindful, and present, and like take a breath. Like Poppy can come in and be a part of the training, and I'm still getting the reps in, so it's going to be okay. Or if I'm in the weight room or I'm running, she's just like been a part of it. She's just so comfortable in that environment because that's all she's ever seen. So I just try to do my best to make sure that she's included.
Wow. I think you're unbelievable. I have a lot of friends with small children, and I know how I see how incredibly difficult that is. And for you to even just constantly try and strike a balance between those two, and hearing you talk about how it's not a detriment and you're like, it's made me more mindful and more present and more, is I think going to be really beautiful for so many women to hear, and especially so many mothers to hear. Does being a mom make the losses and wins of sport better or worse?
I think it makes the losses better because it adds perspective. Like, for example, we were in the World Cup last year. We'd won silver the year before. So we're like, we want to go to the World Cup this year. We have our sights set on gold. And then we lost at the buzzer in the quarterfinal. And so we were there for a couple extra days waiting for the tournament to conclude. So sad. And then I come home and, like, what is the reaction going to be? And then Poppy's like, Mom, look at the art project that I made. Like, whether or not I win or lose, like, she doesn't necessarily like care because she is in her world. So I'm like, I get to step away and have that perspective and be like, Paige the mom. And then I think it also helps me be clear on like what my values are. My values aren't winning. However, my values are like being dedicated to something, being joyful, and making sure that I'm always like in alignment with that, because sports can be so consuming, especially as making a push for the Olympics. It can feel like totally consuming at times. So I think it helps me stay a little bit more grounded and have perspective and remember what is important. Although I'm not perfect and we definitely have our days, but we do our best for sure.
I think that's a really important answer. And also, no one's striving for perfect. So we wouldn't want you to be perfect anyways, Paige, because that's boring. Perfect is boring. But again, I think it's so important for you to share your story as you are, because what I'm hearing is you're stating that all the qualities that make you a better athlete are also because you're a mom, right? You're saying, I'm not so caught up in the wins. I know what my values are. I'm not so caught up in the losses, right? That's what every athlete strives to find, that balance. And for you to say, hey, being a mom has actually helped be additive to who I am as an athlete, I think is such an important story for you to continue to telling as you are. So just thank you for that. Let's talk about coaching, because a great coach can completely change the dynamic of a team and can add to the dynamic of a team. What does it mean to have Kim Goucher as a coach, knowing that she's advocated for mothers in sports throughout her own career?
Yeah, she's an incredible person, mom, role model, 3-time Olympian herself. So like, she has paved the way, like all of the younger generations, including myself, that grew up playing women's basketball in Canada, and like have her to thank. Her and a core group of athletes around her have really just kind of like set the standard for what it is to be a Canadian basketball player, and had to overcome conditions that aren't like we kind of face as athletes now. And I'm sure they have many stories to share about that. But even Michelle and Catherine played with Kim and that group of women for a long time in the 2 Olympics prior to Tokyo. And Michelle and Catherine are the leaders on our team. And I think that they inherited or observed some of the leadership skills that Kim has and embody that on our team. And then now myself and Casey like see that within them and want that culture to continue with our team. So I think there's totally a crossover from the 5-on-5 to 3x3. And then she's been such an amazing resource for me as a mother, and helping me find my voice and advocate for myself as a mother as well. So that's been empowering. And even we were watching the 5-on-5 team qualify for Paris this year, and I was texting Kim, and she had said something that was like so small but so impactful for me, because I am typically a pretty like anxious, high-strung player. And so it's been like anxious excitement leading up to this Olympic qualifier, but Kim had said, it's so fun. I can't wait for you all to have this opportunity. And then it kind of helped me reset to be like, oh yes, it's fun. I get to do this. It's not like I have to do this prior to the Olympics. So even just having that perspective and her passion and love for the game has been a huge addition to our team.
Shout out to Kim as a coach right now for a moment, right? I think that's so impactful for her just to show up in those ways as a leader. It goes to show that as a great leader, whether you're on the court as a leader or as a coach as a leader, that you don't even realize the ripple effect that she's having, right? But she's leading by example and rippling out into your team that will ripple out into the next generation. And that's just amazing leadership right there.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So the landscape for mothers in sport is slowly changing, but how have you seen the landscape change for moms in sport?
It's been interesting to see. And I remember that when I had Poppy, I remember just like looking up like Sydney Leroux, because that's one of the few other athletes that I knew that had a child. And then I look back, Candace Parker, who played in the NBA, she has like a 10 or 11-year-old daughter and is like, she did that for so long and no one talked about like how hard that was. Like her story is incredible and I don't think that was talked about enough. So I'm glad that it's getting more traction and people are wanting to hear kind of the perspective. I think that there has been like some barriers into sport and even just some things that I didn't consider before having Poppy. And I think some of the policies in sport are not necessarily in place yet for women, because previously, many times when women had children, then they stepped away from their sport and retired. And now we're seeing a shift of women that are having kids and continuing to pursue high performance, which I think is incredible. But I think there needs to be policies in place to back women in sport. And then even from my perspective, like single parents in sport, because not having a spouse or someone that's taking care of Poppy when I'm away has added additional layers of like additional barriers to my participation.
No, that's a great answer, right? Just like I'm hearing, it's on multiple fronts. It's people telling their stories. So like you said, it was impactful for you to see other people telling their stories, just like you're doing now and acting as such a role model. And therefore, more people talking about it needs to affect policy change and needs to be thinking outside the box as well, right? On all these different types of motherhood and changes in an athlete's life. If you could rewind to having your daughter, sweet Poppy, and having all these teams kind of say no or putting barriers in your way, what would you tell another athlete who's in that position?
Yeah, so if someone else was in this position, I think I would empower them to pursue like what feels right for them. And I think oftentimes like something that I experienced was a lot of like mom guilt. Like if I'm going and playing, is that I need to be with my daughter all the time, or if she's coming. So it was funny because if she doesn't travel with me, I think about her constantly, or when I'm there, then I'm like, oh, I need to be more focused on the sport or what I'm doing. And I think just like allowing myself some grace, which is I find very challenging, but just like, again, trying to like have that presence when I'm with Poppy, be with Poppy, when I'm on the court, be on the court, and just empowering women that like you can go and pursue your dreams. And, you know, like Poppy gets to see me doing something that I love. And I hope that that's something that she strives for in her future. So just to like eliminate the guilt that we feel, or I have felt as a mother, I think is really important.
I think that's a great answer, because not only will that be impactful for other female athletes that might be in that position, but I think that's going to be really impactful advice for any mom out there who I know who's having mom guilt about pretty much every choice in their life.
I just feel guilty all the time. It's like, oh.
To switch a little bit, you talked about this a little bit at the beginning and these role models at this organization, but you also give back to youth, right? And particularly girls throughout other positions that you've had in your life, including your involvement in the Living Skies League, and then as well with the women's team at the University of Lethbridge. Why is it important to you to encourage girls to get into and stay in sport?
Sport is so important, even just like the social aspect of like being around other people, but the skills that you develop playing in sport and just the joy you have. I had a healthy outlet for, I mentioned like for my anxiety, or like when I feel overwhelmed, I have a healthy outlet to cope with those things. So I think that is something sport provides. But then the friendships that you make, we've had amazing opportunities to travel. Kim is our coach, but she's not allowed to coach during the game. That's just the rule of the sport. So it's been so interesting for us to figure out, sometimes in the heat of the moment, we need to be clear and direct with our communication. And you have to develop those leadership skills, and you have to learn how to receive feedback. And then if something is bothering you or if something happened in the game, have the courage to be able to go to your teammate and talk about it and navigate conflict. And that's something that I didn't like necessarily grow up doing. I would just try to avoid conflict. So in order to like build those skills that like help me as a mom, help me in my roles, help me in my relationships, all have developed through sport.
That was such a great answer. And, you know, that's even something that you've talked about in so much depth. You can tell it means so much to you, right? It's just those relationships that you get in sport and having all of these other teammates who lift you up and that you get to learn all these skills with. I also know that it's important for you to grow the 3x3 sport. What do you wish people knew about 3x3?
I wish people would tune in and watch the games. They're on YouTube, so they're really accessible to watch. But I love when new fans come to me. They're like, oh, I just started watching 3x3 and it's so engaging. The games are only 10 minutes long and it's a 12-second shot clock. So there's so much action and it moves so quickly. And there's, like I mentioned before, a DJ playing in the background. So there's some like cool music. I think it makes people that might not love basketball still be able to come and enjoy 3x3. And I think at the youth level, it's really important because it's more challenging to find 10 players. Or we mentioned girls in sport. It might be hard to find 10 girls to come and play pickup basketball. Or something that I experienced, if you go to the rec center, you're not going to be able to have like a full court to utilize. But oftentimes you can find a hoop, you can play with your friends, and you can just have fun playing basketball.
There's just so much less of a barrier into playing and getting into the sport.
Totally. And to build on that in 3x3, because it is so quick, every athlete is getting touches. Everyone wants to be there and shoot the ball at some point, and 3x3 just provides way more opportunity for everyone to have that.
Well, we're going to hype up everybody listening to go watch 3x3. I mean, I think there's definitely a shift, right? People, probably not on the best side, but because of social media, everyone's attention spans are less. But people are excited about watching sevens rugby, about watching beach volleyball, about watching these kind of quicker, exciting sports. So everybody who's listening needs to put 3x3 basketball into that as well and watch it because it's exciting and it's awesome. I have one question for you to wrap up. In the lead up to Paris 2024, Team Canada has launched the Brave is Unbeatable campaign, aiming to celebrate the inner bravery of all athletes and Canadians that they call upon when facing individual obstacles in everyone's daily lives. I personally think that your journey of breaking down stereotypes of what is possible to be a mom and an elite athlete, constantly facing the scrutiny and pushback, but fighting for it anyways, and sharing your story around it is such powerful bravery to me. And I want you to know that, and that you are bravely paving the road for other female athletes. But what does being brave mean to you personally?
Well, you gave me goosebumps, so thank you very much for that. Like where the bravery, or what it means for me to be brave, is showing up authentically in many different spaces and many different rooms. And, you know, like I said before, like owning your story, being comfortable with who you are, and not worrying about what other people are going to say. There's always going to be people, especially in the age of social media, that are so quick to tear you down. But it's like, be authentic, be true to yourself, follow the things that, you know, like make you happy, that make you joyful. And yeah, just try to strive to be the best version of yourself.
Paige, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that I will be, and that everybody listening to this podcast will be cheering you on so hard on your road to Paris and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and the platform. Like, this has been such a privilege for me, so thank you so much.
It was such a pleasure to have Paige join me today. What a fantastic conversation we had. I really admire her ability to find balance as an athlete that's performing at the highest level, in addition to raising her daughter. I was particularly struck when Paige talked about how her mentors at the Living Skies Indigenous Basketball League helped her reframe her mindset to embrace motherhood as a strength rather than something she needed to apologize for. I think this is such an important message, not just for women, but also for workplaces to hear. There is still a long way to go when it comes to supporting parents, especially single parents in sport. I appreciate Paige being here today and bravely sharing her story as a way to empower others in a similar situation. I know I am excited to tune into some women's 3x3 basketball in Paris this summer, and I hope that after this conversation, you are too. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review. It's the biggest way you can support the podcast. To follow these athletes' stories and results as they compete in Paris and beyond, download the Team Canada Olympic app, visit olympic.ca, or follow Team Canada on social. To watch clips from all episodes of Momentum, subscribe to Team Canada's YouTube channel. See you next time.